Welcome to Unleash Curiosity by Vital Pet Life.
I'm Dr. Amber De Silva, veterinarian and advocate for integrative pet care.
And I'm Donie Yamamoto, founder and CEO of Vital Pet Life. We're so glad you're here.
This is a space where curiosity, compassion, and science converge, where we explore the powerful mind-body connection that supports your pet's health and your own.
Each week, we'll dive deep into the world of pet wellness, breaking down myths, exploring ingredients, and learning from expert voices across the industry.
From nutrition and sustainability to transparency and advocacy, we're here to help you feel more confident, connected, and informed in your care choices.
So let's get into it, because when we know better, we do better. This is Unleash Curiosity. Today, we have a special guest, all the way from Canada, Dr. Jake Burlet, the CEO of CanBiocin, a veterinarian and entrepreneur.
That's right. Dr. Jake isn't just a fellow vet of mine, but he's also been an advisor to two multinational veterinary pharmaceutical companies. He'll be joining us to discuss the purpose of probiotics and how they help the gut health of your dog.
Let's welcome Dr. Jake.
Dr. Jake, welcome to Unleash Curiosity by Vital Pet Life.
It's good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you in our podcast. Yeah, we're excited to talk about the probiotic. What would you say is the primary purpose of the probiotic product?
That's a good question. Let's start with something kind of basic. You know that I've got a science background. Lots of medical terminology is derived from Latin. So if we think about the term probiotic, just for example, pro means for and bios means life. Probiotic, really by definition, from Latin means for life. So when you ask the question, what's the primary purpose of the probiotic product? For us, it's absolutely to support wellness, vitality, and longevity for companion animals for their entire life. Like many things, if you go back in time, Latin derives what the term is probiotic is from. The primary purpose of the probiotic, again, to support across life. Probiotics simply are good bacteria. Oftentimes when people think and hear about bacteria, they think bad things, but probiotic by definition are good bacteria. And generally, probiotics work from the inside out. And what we mean by that is that most probiotics are ingested or they're delivered orally, and then they exert their effect through the gastrointestinal system. They move their way through the esophagus, through the stomach, through the small intestine, and then where they work their magic is in the lower intestine. Again, the primary purpose of probiotic product is to support health, wellness, and vitality across the entirety of an animal's lifespan.
Dr. Jake, what are the origins of the wolf biome research?
Well, I think it's, we know that wolves are the ancestral origin of the domestic dog. So they're genetically linked. I think that's pretty well known. So the origins of the wolf biome research is that the wolves from which we isolated the probiotics, those wolves lived in their native environment. They were not in a zoo. They run wild, as they've done for centuries and centuries, in the northern boreal forest of Canada. So part of the origin is having these wolves that we were very lucky to intersect with, living as they have, living and foraging as they have for centuries in the northern boreal forest of Canada. So if we think about wolves a little bit more, I think they're a perfect example from nature, where it's an example of survival of the fittest. They eat what they harvest. They're not being presented a bowl of kibble every day. They're not exposed to antibiotics. They're not exposed to vaccine. And they're not exposed to any other human interventions in the environment in which they coexist. Another way we think about wolves, they are like very well-conditioned athletes. They cover a broad geographic area, and they need to be healthy and mobile to thrive, getting back to this concept of survival of the fittest. Their gastrointestinal tract, because they are living and coexisting and harvesting, foraging in their historical environment, is that their gastrointestinal tract is unchanged. The origins, again, of the wolf microbiome research is that we, and when I say we, in this particular myself, so this isn't a third party, this is myself, happened to be at the right place at the right time, where we intersected with some wild wolves. We had a chance to follow their well-traveled nature trail. And again, right place at the right time, we were provided with a freshly voided fecal sample from which we were able to isolate the the probiotic species. The origins of it were really being in the right place at the right time in a pristine, natural environment. I know I keep coming back to that, but these are animals, they could not be any more native. It's not like we went down to the zoo and did this. We found them in their natural habitat. And to us, that's pretty special.
Yeah, I know. It's very special. And I think my follow through question, I mean, you already mentioned why, how you do the wolf biome research, but what prompted you to believe that the wolf biome is a viable and beneficial pet ingredient?
I like the way the question, it's interesting to me the way the question is asked, what prompted you to believe in that? I guess the other way we think was that why wouldn't we believe it? Why wouldn't we believe that the wolf microbiome could be a source of beneficial bacteria? The way I think about life, as I know you do, Donie, is very much from a glass half full versus a glass half empty perspective. So why wouldn't we believe that that would be the case? And then the second thing is that it's a bit of a statement that I've said already. Our scientific hypothesis is that you've got wolves and a domestic dog that very clearly have a shared genetic background. Clearly, they've got similar anatomy and physiology. From an anatomical point of view, wolves are bigger. They've got bigger mass. They're stronger through the shoulders. But the hypothesis was with a similar genetic background and anatomy and physiology, a free-ranging wolf in its native environment could very well be a source of a unique and beneficial functional ingredient. So again, right place at the right time, and provided a sample, and then a hypothesis, and it's still a hypothesis until we test it scientifically. The first part of the story is why not, then the scientific hypothesis, and then we move to proving it out.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated answer, but it's absolutely the truth behind how we started this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Amber has a follow-through question.
Yeah. So which scientific studies do you find most persuasive in demonstrating the correlation between the wolf biome and improved gut health?
Well, there's a few. There's not just one. So when we talk about scientific studies, there's two ways to think about that. There's a science that's done in the laboratory, and then there's science that's done with live animals. And that's, again, using Latin terms, that's in vitro and in vivo. But to your question about the scientific studies that we find the most persuasive and correlating the wolf biome and improved gut health, the first one is improved digestion. And if we think that one through, going back to wolves in their native environment, they don't just eat the muscle meat. I don't expect that you've come across a wolf of scavenge. They eat absolutely everything. So the microbiome helps digest the everything that they eat. And when I say everything, I mean everything. And the reason they eat all of the body tissues is that those body tissues are a source of microingredients as well as protein and carbohydrate. So one of the scientific studies is that the probiotics are absolutely scientifically proven to improve the digestion of nutrients. The story that I've told is in the native example where they eat the entirety of a carcass, but getting the most out of the nutrients also applies to domestic dogs and getting all of the nutritional value that they can out of the diet they're being presented. So the first instance of scientific studies is improved digestion. A second example, these particular probiotic strains, as they grow and multiply, they produce some very interesting metabolites. One of the metabolites that they produce is a compound called a bacteriocin. I know that's a pretty sciencey term, but what a bacteriocin is, it's a compound that helps inhibit pathogens is another pretty sciencey word. But what a pathogen is a bacteria or a virus that can cause harm. I'm going to use some names that I'm pretty confident are be well known. Salmonella, E. coli, Clostridia. So I don't think you have to have a deep science background to be familiar with those terms because we hear about them as pathogens that impact the health of animals as well as people. A second compelling piece of science is that the probiotics help inhibit those pathogens. Third example, in addition to producing bacteriocins, in addition to maximizing the uptake of nutrients, these probiotics also help produce short-chain fatty acids. They're particular compounds that do a bunch of different things. They strengthen the intestinal lining. They've got anti-inflammatory effects, and they help stimulate the immune system. All of those things help build resistance so that when companion animals are faced with a virus, a bacteria, bacteria, something that's challenging their
Oh,
immune system, they simply have a
that's
stronger immune system. I'll stop my fourth example here is that these probiotics can also help with glucose regulation, appetite regulation, and they can also send messages from the gastrointestinal tract to the brain. And that's called the gut-brain axis. That's what we know. When I say that that's what we know, we believe that that's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we
oh,
continue to invest in and
oh,
pursue about additional benefits that probiotics provide. We're learning more every day, every week, and we continue to invest in the science because people want to understand. They want to know why these probiotics actually help support health and wellness. So we're very vested in investing in more science to help better explain the mechanism of action. And everything I really talked about was in the context of lab work. What's really important is how does that translate into live animals? So the first part of what I've talked about is
yeah.
really all what we demonstrate in the first instance in the lab to help validate these ingredients are going to be a benefit to animals.
Yeah. Other than finding those benefits, right, as you've mentioned, what are the signs that pet parents can see that can demonstrate the benefits? Like me, for one, I know you mentioned about behavior before, the benefit. And number two, for me, which is really important, is like the stool.
Yeah,
Seeing how good the stool is of my dogs makes me really
yeah.
happy, meaning they're healthy. And they've been taking the probiotic for like 3 months now. And I've got pretty good stools like every morning. And but other than that, I think you mentioned about gut health to the brain health. Is that where the behavior benefit comes in? And can you expound on that if I'm correct? Or yeah.
Well, for sure, you're correct. So let me talk about that a little bit. I'll go back to your first comment, though, about digestion and better stools. Better stools are really one example of great digestion.
Hmm.
So when you have poor digestion, that's when
Yeah.
you can get watery stools. You had introduced or come back to behavior, the science connection between the intestinal tract and the brain. So that's called the gut-brain axis. What we see, and this is an interesting part because this is a bit subjective as opposed to objective science. We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dog owners provide feedback to
Mm-hmm.
us that their dogs
Mm.
have a positive impact on behavior, meaning that they're calmer. And when we think about that, or when I thought about that, that almost seems counterintuitive. When you think about a wolf, you think about a predator in nature, and
Yeah.
you don't necessarily think about calmness until you think about it a little bit longer. So while it might be sound
Mm.
counterintuitive, one of the reasons why we think it makes sense is that
Yeah.
wolves as a predator, they rely on being calm, cunning, and
Mm-hmm.
quiet while they prepare to stalk their prey. So it makes perfect sense to me where there is a point in their daily life where it's incredibly beneficial to be cool, calm, and collected until they need to
Yeah.
spring into action.
Pray. Yeah.
Of course, we don't see that in our companion animals because they're not out hunting for their food every day. But what we are seeing is very, very similar effects on behavior.
Mm.
And where we see it most pronounced is oftentimes in rescue dogs that have been rehomed. And I think you can imagine a rescue dog that's had anxiety, may or may not have been ill treated. Sometimes they're scared about humans, they're reluctant to join a family unit. We see a positive effect there.
Yeah.
We've also had many, many examples of really athletic dogs. Oftentimes, athletic dogs are described as being somewhat
Mhm.
hyper, and there's a positive effect there. So if I go back to your question, what are things that pet parents can see? Because it's great to read about the
Mhm.
science. It's nice to hear about what happened in the lab. But what can you and should you expect to see in your
Mhm.
animal, your companion animal? We've already talked about
Wow.
improved stools. We've talked about this linkage to
Mhm.
mood, behavior, anxiety. The other thing that
Yeah.
we very, 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 very regularly see is an improvement in skin and coat.
Mhm.
And again, that's
Yeah.
related to digestion.
Yeah.
It's also related to modulating immune effect. Oftentimes,
Yes.
skin and coat condition are a consequence of inflammation in the intestinal tract, and irritants are being absorbed into the
Oh.
bloodstream and they show up in the skin and coat. So with a stronger intestinal tract, a stronger intestinal lining, and moderation of the immune
Oh.
system, we very commonly see, and pet parents should expect to see, an improvement in skin and coat. And then just as kind of a wrap-up
Mm.
comment is that when you're building and maintaining health and wellness, no different than ourselves. If you eat well, if you exercise well, and if you take care of your diet, you set yourself up for success. You're less challenged by catching an illness. You feel stronger, you feel more vital. so much of that is driven by what happens in our intestinal tract, and it's exactly the same in our companion animals. The basis of good health is good diet, not overeating, exercise, good environment, and that sets you up for success. And again, if we go back to these particular probiotics, so wolf origin, those are organisms that have not been exposed to the environment which all of us live in and exist in, whether it's urban or rural. It really gives, and we've got a number of strains, it's not just one strain, it gives those animals a really great opportunity to set them up for success over all of their life stages. Science driven, what happens in the lab. But really what's most important to pet parents is what they can and should expect to see with this type of dietary supplementation. It's nothing but a good news story. When you slow down and think about it, it's logical and the science drives the outcome. There's lots of examples where nature has solutions for us. We just have to be attentive and pay attention. And sometimes the solution is right in front of our own face.
Exactly.
So you've talked about your
I
dogs having
know.
been
It's
on
so
these
amazing that
probiotics for
you were
about 3
given
months
like
or
the chance
so.
to even capture it like from nature. It was a gift to you and it's so special. And I have to say, Dr. J, special the discovery of the wolf biome, and then I see it in my animals, like especially Tuxedo. He's a little bit older, and then I have a puppy that we just rescued.
Yes.
I really saw it on my two guys that have been taking the probiotics for months.
Yes.
Yeah. And all the stuff that you mentioned, like about the benefits, I noticed that they eat less treats now because I don't try to give it to them. When you mention about the better weight, Tuxedo's in his healthiest weight now. It's really amazing when you said that it also helps with the inflammation and they're more calmer.
Again, you're seeing the things that you should expect to see. As they get more nutrition, as they get the maximum out of their nutrition, that makes them feel like they have been satisfied. I think I would do kind of the summary. There's just simply no doubt that the intestinal microbiome affects all of our body systems and how we show up as healthy people, and exactly the same thing for our companion animals. All of our body systems are regulated in part through the intestinal microbiome. We continue to learn more all the time. And I think it's one of those interesting things in the evolution of humanity. We've tried so hard to manufacture solutions to maintain our health and wellness when many of the things that nature provides to us are there in the first place. So we just have to be attentive to them, watch for them, and then apply them as it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the world abounds with solutions, I believe. So if we take care of the planet and the environment, is going to help take care of us and our companion animals. And in that particular instance, everybody wins.
Yeah, I'm really excited on how the probiotic will fare. And I feel like most of the people that have tested the product loves it. So I'm excited. My takeaway is just, as we take care of our body, like gut, we should do this the same with our animals. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Jake help us with our formula in our vital probiotic. Dr. Amber, do you have any takeaways?
Yeah, I am also really excited to see how many pets are going to be helped by the probiotic. I think personally, probiotics and gut health and the microbiome is one of the most fascinating subjects to study and to try to understand. I think it's just amazing how trillions of bacteria that live in the gut can have so many effects on all of the body systems. Again, I'm just really excited to see pets, getting on a probiotic and improving their overall health through that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again to Dr. Jake for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Jake, so much for joining us. How can our listeners reach out to you?
The easiest way for sure will be through our website at www.canbiocin, CanBiocin.ca. So I'll be particular that it's .ca and not .com. So again, www.canbiocin.ca. And we look forward to helping and answering questions from any pet parents out there, dog or cat. I know that we didn't talk about the feline species on this podcast, but maybe I'll be fortunate enough to be invited back in the future because we've got a very exciting and kind of similar story about being able to provide unique species-specific probiotics for cats. And in that particular instance, those probiotics were isolated from wild mountain lions. Maybe we can do this again for our feline pet parents in the not too distant future.
Yeah, we're currently like in the process of testing the other ingredients that we're gonna add.
That's
Yay. Thank you,
fantastic.
Dr. Jake.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again for having me. It's always a treat to be involved with you guys.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Don't forget to click the follow button so you'll be notified about our new weekly episodes.
This is Dr. Amber. Thanks again for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know if you have any questions about this episode, and we'll answer them in an upcoming episode. Email us at podcast@vitalpetlife.com.